Welcome to another property market update for Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane for 2024. And as usual, we're joined by Lauren Staley at Infolio Property Advisors and Your Empire in Melbourne, and Zoran Solano, Hot Property Buyers Agency and Your Empire in Brisbane, and of course myself, Chris Gray, at Your Empire in Sydney. Now, we haven't got the CoreLogic results. We're recording this slightly early before the start of May, so we haven't got the results, but I think it's going to be reasonably positive. But I guess what is in the news at the moment is, watching the news this morning, they're actually talking about interest rate rises. And so what's that going to mean for everyone? Because obviously everyone was encouraged by the potential rate drops that we were going to get from the second half of the year. Now they're talking about maybe 2 or 3 rate rises. I think one of the big things from my perspective is, look, they talk about different things every day. And part of it is just different economists wanting to try and get some airtime. But also, obviously, things do change and no one can predict the future. So in my mind, it's even more reason to act now, because if the rate rises do come in, it means your serviceability is going to go down. If they don't come through and we actually get rate drops, that means everyone's serviceability is going to go up. And then there's probably even more reason for more people wanting to buy. Obviously, there's still no stock, and so things keep pumping on. All right, Lauren, what are your thoughts? And are you hearing about the rate rises down in Melbourne as well?
I have to be honest, I didn't hear about any rate rises, but a lot of people have been talking to me about the fact that they were expecting or hoping that we would have some rate reductions towards the second half of this year, and their fear and trepidation that potentially that wouldn't be the case. With inflation starting to sort of peak again, which is unfortunate. I think a lot of what happens in our market is going to be very much hinged on what happens in the United States with their election, and Trump and all that kind of stuff will have an impact on what happens over here. If we do have a rate rise, I think it'll be very unfortunate for people, because we're already seeing, particularly in Melbourne, a lot of people having to put investment grade properties on the market. We're seeing a slowdown in regional and coastal towns. But inner blue chip Melbourne is still performing really, really well. But I think that what will happen is it'll just impact property prices. For us, we're sort of seeing something a little bit different to what you guys are seeing in Brisbane and Sydney. So it's slightly different because of how heavy our taxing is at the moment as well.
And how about you, Zoran?
I definitely agree with Lauren when it comes to a lot of investors exiting the market at the moment. A lot of investors are looking at their principal place of residence debt and going, you know what, let's sell the investment, cash in, we'll park that 2 or 3 or 400 grand we've got as equity sitting in the investment property in our offset against our non-deductible PPR, and take a little bit of a load off. Or they're looking to upsize their family home and they're using the investment property as the vehicle to access some cash, which obviously, you know, that's the goal, right? You know, if that's the goal for those people to upgrade their family home and the investment property was the vehicle that helped them do that, then that's amazing. They're reaching those goals. But what it also means is there are less rental properties in the market, which is stressing our already undersupplied rental market. And the most of those investment properties that are being sold, I would say 70 to 80% are being transacted to owner-occupiers. I've been saying this for months. We're just evaporating rental properties out of the market, making it harder and harder for people to find rentals. And so, yeah, I think when it comes to interest rates, if we see an interest rate increase, I think that will be the nail in the coffin for a lot of investors who have been on the fence about what to do with their investment property.
Sure. And obviously people have still got to manage the cash flow. Even if you've got the equity, it's being able to service and pull that equity out. I mean, I was just with a couple of young 30-year-old buyers yesterday with a young son. They said, look, they're around kind of the eastern suburbs, but more around the Maroubra, they're kind of cheaper, kind of $1 to $1.25 million kind of range for 2-bedders. And the bottom line is they still know that they need to get in, is there is no rentals. And so they don't want the stress of trying to find a rental every 6 to 12 months. And so they'll do whatever it takes to get in. And that's the thing is supply and demand, especially in the good areas, that's the bottom thing that's driving the demand. And in actual fact, we've actually had a record month this month, and it's been absolutely fantastic that lots of people have been buying everything from, I guess, first home buyers at buying at 800 or 900 grand through to developers at 3 or 4 million trying to go and develop bits and pieces. But Zoran, what are you finding with auction clearance rates up there? and I guess the mix of buyers agents and I guess amateurs up there. And can you always tell the difference?
Oh, I think you can, definitely. So clearance rates overall are actually quite positive. I think the statistics are always very difficult to really cut through. Some agencies will consider offers prior or auctions, properties sold immediately after auction, still as a successful auction campaign result. So it's very difficult to get accurate data around that. But we're finding that buyers in the auction market at the moment, especially your first home buyers, they're a little bit of a lamb to slaughter, to be honest, because they're up against selling agents and auctioneers who are experienced at auction bidding. Now, obviously, every market is different. I know you guys in Sydney, avoiding auction is definitely a part of the strategy down there. But here in Brisbane, I actually find if you know what you're doing and you appoint someone to give you a competitive advantage, auction can be a great way to buy. We've purchased some recently, $50,000 to $100,000 below online valuation by bidding well at auction. There was an example just on the weekend. If anyone is on our Instagram, we did a prediction beforehand. We videoed the auction, then I did a wrap up afterwards. And what we're seeing right now is downsizes with the cash and life experience are the dominant force out there in the market. Investors are still a little bit on the sideline, and that first home buyers are just too inexperienced, and they need that guidance under the hammer.
Yeah. And look, as you say, up in Sydney, it's very rare that we go to auction. We only go to auction sometimes on home purchases, because quite often the vendors then, they are very emotional over it, and so they want to go to auction. But definitely for the investment purchases, pretty much 100% will always take prior to auction. And again, it's like speaking to the young couple yesterday, is they just go there and then suddenly it's $1 million and then it goes to 1.2, and so they can't compete. So people are bidding based on what the bank will lend them rather than actually what the property's worth. Now, Lauren, I know down in Melbourne then there's a lot of auctions, and you guys are very dominant there as well. Again, can you tell the professional buyers agents versus the amateurs down there? Is it pretty easy to spot?
Oh, it's pretty easy to spot. Yeah. I think we often get asked, what's the advantage of having a buyer's agent if you have to bid at auction? And I think that, the reality is most people find auctions really, really intimidating. They've only ever done it once or twice, and there is strategy that is involved in how you're going to approach an auction, and it's individual. It's case by case. It depends on who has been, who's selling the property, how they've quoted that property, the buyer profile that's going to be attracted to it, as to how we would manage any auction strategy. And it's all very, very different. I know recently we purchased a property, and it wasn't that we intimidated someone, but our strategy was to be so strong and aggressive in the way that we bid that the other buyer just thought, oh, bugger it, I'm going to pull out. So, we don't, but we didn't have that much money left, but it was just in the way that we conducted ourselves. And I guess unless you've done that plenty of times, know how to play it, you can't represent that way on day of auction. But it's easy to tell who the amateurs are versus the professional professional bidders. There's plenty of professional bidders out there that are pretty average too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm finding as well here in the Brisbane market. There are some buyers agents who will deliberately avoid auction attendance, and I actually think it just shows a missing link in their armor when it comes to providing a professional service. At the end of the day, if that client's ideal property is going to auction, like Chris said, owner occupier, dream home, whatever it might be, to tell that client, no, let's not go to auction, or to put a buyer's agent who isn't confident and experienced at doing auctions in that position, you're probably no better off. So that's why an auction specialist agent, like myself and like yourself, Lauren, guys who do this every day is vitally important.
Yep, 100%. Now, Lauren, obviously a lot of people are getting their information from the media, be it social media or on the mainstream news or newspapers. How accurate is that compared to the reality of what's actually happening on the street?
Well, I think the reason I wanted to approach this today was on Saturday night, some friends of mine came over. I bought them their house in the same suburb that I live in Melbourne. They walked in the front door and they said to me, oh my God, is it actually for real that Melbourne is the only state that's or city that is going backwards in growth over everyone else. And I'm like, well, there are absolutely suburbs and properties that are just not performing. You know, as I've banged on about it a long time, we have been hit enormously. We've got the highest stamp duty rates. We've got land tax rates. We've been taxed for everything down here to make up for the errors of our former government's COVID decisions. It's as simple as that. So, but the reality is the properties that we are buying are competed for, every single one. You know, we will assess what a home is worth based on current market conditions and the data that is available to us. And then we'll sort of say, okay, well, where we think it might go under competitive circumstances. And 9 times out of 10, it's performing better than that. So I think the reality is people are thinking that they're buying well, but you're only buying well if you're probably buying a B or a C grade property. If you're buying it cheap, it's not good enough. And so I think people need to think long and hard about their acquisition decisions. It is about the asset selection, because we have absolutely got not even a 2-speed market. We've got a 3-speed market. You know, there's a lot going on there. And the generalization that's put out in the media, I think, is counterproductive. And I think it's downright dangerous.
Yeah, and look, from my time at Sky News, and I know CoreLogic used to come up with capital growth figures literally on a daily basis. And again, we'd have the discussion with them to say, well, especially when there's so few properties turning over in certain markets, then does it really mean anything? And I said, I'm always looking at a 10 or 20-year rate. And they said, so are we, but that's what the media wants. They want something to talk about.
Right.
And again, we talk about it in our areas about the clearance rate or the vacancy rate. We don't care what it is, because we know for, as you say, investment grade properties that are in small blocks with parking, not on a main road, with no lifts, gyms or pools, the clearance rate's 100% and the vacancy rate is 0. Exactly. Give or take a couple of days and stuff like that. And so we don't worry about it. We don't worry about what happens in the bigger blocks or on the main roads. So it really doesn't matter. How about yourself, Zoran?
Yeah. I think, you know, it's a very similar situation here in Queensland. And at the end of the day, quality is always going to be quality. And I think you're right, Lauren. There's, you know, we say it every time, there's markets within markets. There's certain pockets here that just aren't performing. And there are other areas that are overperforming, or property styles that are having a resurgence. I've said before, units and apartments, they're, you know, one of the strongest markets we've seen in a decade here. You know, you used to put a unit on realestate.com and have to give away a free set of steak knives for everyone to turn up for an open. Now there's a queue. You have to take a ticket.
Yep. So look, I think the advice from month to month, if you go back through the records on YouTube or on social media, is the record's still the same. There's still no properties in the good areas. Prices are still generally rising in those areas. You've got to be in it to win it. So whether you think interest rates are going to go up, they're going to go down, or they're going to go stable, generally in hindsight, everyone would say, get in the market. But as we say, if you want some local information, reach out to Lauren at Infolio and Your Empire in Melbourne, Zoran at Hot Property Buyers Agency in Your Empire in Brisbane, or myself, Chris Gray, in Sydney. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next month.